Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the continuation of 2020's Final Fantasy VII Remake, is less than a month away, and I gotta be honest, I haven't been this excited for a new game in a long time. What Remake did was exceptional, taking one of the most beloved games of all time and transforming it into a great modern action RPG with awesome combat and a fresh take on the story. With the sequel fast approaching, I wanted to finally take the journey through the expanded lore of Final Fantasy VII, also known as the Compilation of Final Fantasy VII. I had previously only played the original game years back, but never really touched the spin-offs, and with Remake and Rebirth pulling influence and story elements from all of them, I wanted to check them out to be prepared to enjoy Rebirth to the fullest. And with that experience, I now wanted to go through my recommendations of what to play and watch, and most importantly, why I think they might be important for Rebirth. I will try to keep things spoiler free as possible, but at points I will mention some moments in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I do have to cover a popular remake theory that some people might consider a spoiler. I will also reference the released Rebirth trailers, excluding the most recent state of play stuff. You ready? Let's go. So the first question to be answered is obviously, can I just play the remake and then Rebirth? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. I know a lot of people who played Remake without having even played the original game, and they enjoyed the experience. And I don't see why things would be any different for Rebirth. You will definitely miss references, and some moments might be less impactful, but I have faith that the game won't leave newcomers hanging. You can still enjoy the new story without the burden of pre-existing knowledge and figure things out alongside the characters. I hate gatekeeping, and I know some people just don't have the time or interest in consuming everything a franchise has to offer, so just focusing their limited free time on the new release is totally okay. Just go and enjoy Rebirth for what it is. But if you consider playing Rebirth alone and not play Remake before it, then I would think you're a bit crazy, but who am I to judge?
You got a problem with that?
Do I have a problem with that? Oh, you can bet.
He doesn't.
And next, to the question of the original Final Fantasy VII. Should you play or maybe watch a recap of it before you play Rebirth? And my answer to that is that I highly recommend it. But why? Why should you experience the original game if Remake and now Rebirth are just telling the same story? Wouldn't playing the original just spoil the new experience? And that is a totally valid question. If Rebirth was just a normal video game remake, then playing the original wouldn't be that important, but Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are special cases. And now we come to the previously mentioned theory, so a spoiler warning. The popular theory, which I totally agree with, is that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are not remakes of the original game in a traditional sense, but they are in fact a sequel. That a character from the original timeline travels back in time to change how things will play out, and other characters have varying levels of knowledge of this past timeline. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, there were these ghosts who were clearly trying to make the story happen as it did in the original game, but the characters resisted, and now their fate is uncertain, which means things will play out differently. That said, I do think Rebirth will cover 95% of the same things as the original game, so playing the original game close to Rebirth might not be the most effective way to go about it, because a lot of it will probably be repetitive. But on the other hand, knowing when things are going differently might be important, so my recommendation is to know the story of the original game, but I don't think playing it is necessary. For me, watching one of my favorite streamers play through the game gave me my necessary fix and reminded me of some things I had forgotten. And if you choose to play it, especially if it's your first time, I highly recommend playing it on PC, as there are some mods to handle some quality of life features, as your enjoyment will depend on your tolerance to old and somewhat archaic game mechanics.
Wow, talk about ancient.
It's an antique.
Next up is what I consider the most important spin-off, Crisis Core. Crisis Core takes place few years before the events of Final Fantasy VII and follows a character named Zack. Zack is not around in original Final Fantasy VII, but his legacy was very important as his and Cloud's story are interconnected. But is Crisis Core important for Rebirth? And for that, The answer is heavy yes. Based on the trailers and the ending of Remake, Zack will play an important part in Rebirth's story, even if he was not part of the original game, and that seems to be the big change-up Rebirth is making. It is also possible that some of the supporting characters or story elements from Crisis Core might show up in Rebirth in some way. Crisis Core was originally a PSP game, but it got a remaster subtitled Reunion on modern consoles and PC last year. The fact that they did remaster it shows that the developers also consider Crisis Core an important piece of the story. So what I'm thinking is that knowing Crisis Core might actually be more important than knowing the original Final Fantasy VII when it comes to enjoying some aspects of Rebirth. The only thing holding it back as a singular experience is that it does spoil a big twist in the original game, so they kinda come as a package deal. But despite that, I highly recommend playing Crisis Core Reunion before Rebirth. It is easily available on modern platforms and only takes 10 to 15 hours to beat the story. Or at least watch a recap so you know more about Zack and his story.
How about you? Me? Gungaga.
And now we change mediums, as the next thing on our list is the CG movie Advent Children from 2006. The movie takes place a couple years after the events of the original game. Cloud and other returning phases are trying to cure a sickness plaguing the planet while fighting against a new threat. But is this cinematic classic going to be important for Rebirth? And my answer to that is I doubt it. I think that Rebirth won't be pulling too many story elements from Advent Children, as I don't think they would really fit in the picture at this point. But that doesn't make Advent Children totally useless, as they are still using it for visual influence. For example, the final fight in Remake is just bursting with Advent Children references. So, should you watch Advent Children before playing Rebirth? It's definitely not necessary for story, but if you're already committed to experiencing more than just the remake, then it's a decent 2-hour watch. The new 4K version looks surprisingly good, it has a decent story and some really cool battle sequences, and it might make you appreciate certain things more, like the remake's final fight.
Okay, so you're good.
And finally, we get the Dirge of Cerberus, the PlayStation 2 third-person action shooter starring Vincent Valentine, an optional party member from the original Final Fantasy VII. The game takes place 3 years after the original game and 1 year after Advent Children. Dirge of Cerberus is an interesting case when it comes to Rebirth. The main game of Final Fantasy VII Remake didn't really have any connection to Dirge of Cerberus, but damn did the Yuffie DLC switch things up, as Yuffie comes across a group named Deep Ground and its bosses Nero and Vice. I'm certain they won't stop there, and Deep Ground might end up having some role in Rebirth, even if they were not around in the original Final Fantasy VII. And that leads us to Dirge of Cerberus, a game that is all about Deep Ground, so if you want to know more about that specific area of the lore, then you should really look into it. People like to hate on Dirge of Cerberus, but I personally thought it was a really fun game that holds up, and Vincent is still the coolest dude on the planet. And the only problem is that the game is stranded on PlayStation 2, so that or emulation is your only option to play it.
You understand, right?
I don't think so.
For me, these have been the main things you should consider playing or otherwise consume before jumping into Rebirth. There are some other titles as well, like Before Crisis, a mobile game that was never released outside of Japan. Its story, alongside other games of the compilation, will be recreated in the ongoing mobile gacha game Ever Crisis. There are also a few books set in different places on the timeline, from which the one titled The Kids Are Alright, a Turk's side story, is probably the most influential, as they took characters like Leslie and Kyrie from it and made them side characters in Remake. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to do so in Rebirth. Alright, so in conclusion, here is my list of what to play, watch or read before Rebirth in order of importance based on my opinion. Final Fantasy VII Remake, the Yuffie DLC Intermission, Crisis Core Reunion, the original Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus, Advent Children, and if after all that you still have nothing else to do, go read a book. But in the end, it's all up to you of what you find interesting and how much time you want to dedicate to it. Like I said before, Rebirth can totally be enjoyed by just having played Remake, but I'm certain that knowing the rest of the compilation will make certain things more impactful. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. I had a lot of fun going through the expanded Final Fantasy VII universe, and now I can fully focus on Rebirth in a couple weeks. Let me know in the comments down below what will your Rebirth prep consist of. And like always, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Thank you and have a great day.